I think trying to summarise the diverse landscape we've traversed over the last couple of days is really impossible. I've tried to summarise it, I think, in three areas. A number of talks have looked at New Zealand's place in the world. What are our emissions? How efficient we are in terms of a producer? What's our terms of, where we are as leaders in the world through the Global Research Alliance? And also the challenges that brings. I think it's been very clear that we are up to looking at the challenge, but it is a challenge, and particularly the challenge of meeting a 30% reduction by 2030, and actually getting the practices in place to meet that challenge. Then I think we had a whole lot of talks emphasising that change is coming. It really is. The climate's changing. And that will bring its own challenges. Environment is now at the forefront of farming. It is something that we have to embrace. It's something that is a challenge, but New Zealand farmers have always been up for a challenge. And then coming back to what will happen in the future, the climate will change. The weather changes, our crops change. And James Palmer, with those stark pictures of eroded hillsides in Hawke's Bay. And what are they going to be like if you get intense storm events that are much greater than the storm events we have now? And that was really a water quality issue. So we are going to face some new challenges because the climate is changing. And then there's a whole lot of things that we've had really about what can we actually do. And I think there was John Roach said something, I think on Twitter, John, remember you do use Twitter, that coming from the survey, over 90% of farmers say they've taken an action within the last few years to improve the environment. And I think we have to or give farmers real credit for what they are doing. We can't just keep hammering the rural sector. There are things that are happening. We acknowledge it's difficult, but please let's acknowledge the wins and gains as well. But then we really come to, there's the challenge of adaptation, a lot of theoretical stuff, but what are we doing on the ground was still somewhat elusive, I thought. But then, Victoria putting forward, there are things we can do now in the mitigation space, but they are relatively modest. The 2 to 10%, the 2 to 5%, Phil Janot came up with the same sorts of numbers as well. Land use change, and Susie's work there on land use change. But forestry is the big one. But forestry, as we heard, can come up with its own issues around rural communities, employment, etc. And so we have to be very careful around land use change issues and what they really mean. And I think then we come round to the technologies. And again, what it shows is it's not simple. All the talks we've had today, whether it is about accounting and estimation, whether it's about finding new technologies, the methane vaccine proving elusive, a lot more optimism around inhibitors. But then, as Dee pointed out, we've had an inhibitor in the past that fell foul of rules. So we have to then ensure that the products anything like that as a mitigation product does meet all the food safety regulations, other environmental regulations as well. And so nothing is simple. And I think we can overdo that. There are things we can do, but there are technical challenges that will require investment and will require time. And I think one of the big, again, challenges is how we can meet some ambitious reduction targets, and agriculture will be part of that, while facing these other technical challenges about getting technologies that can make big hits. But I was also incredibly encouraged, I think, by Hamish's talk around Synlait. When, as a company, and they're not the only company doing this, but as a company embracing that challenge, saying that it's not just a challenge, it's an opportunity about living within planetary boundaries, and that we shouldn't just think that this is an obstacle, we should think of it as an opportunity. And I think that's the note I would like to end on, really, as for the summing up the conference, is that with every change, there comes both threats and opportunities. And I think for us, it's about where can we bring opportunity out of this? And I go back to a conversation we had with the minister last night, when he was saying that in the 80s, he was one of the people protesting out in the streets against the subsidies for agriculture being taken off. And he admitted it was the best thing that ever happened now to agriculture. And I think maybe in 30 years' time, we might say the same thing about the environmental issues. They were challenging at the time, but they were an opportunity, one that we embraced, and in actual fact, one that led us to a better future. So on that note, I would like to sort of finish the formal conference, but I do have a number of thank yous I would like to give. And my first thank you is to all the attendees. We had approximately round about 300, which was a challenge to accommodate, but very pleasing challenge, and certainly probably greater than we ever expected. And so I would also like to thank Neil Williams from MPI. It was his idea to extend it from the normal NZAGRC conference, which we had every 2 years, a one-day event, which we really talked about mitigation. And this time we broadened the scope, covered the Sustainable Land Management and Climate Change Programme. So it brought in a whole new dimension, and that has been, I think, a very positive and beneficial approach. And I would like to thank all our speakers. Really have been some excellent talks over the 2 days, so thanks for the time you've put in for that. I'd like to thank all the chairs. I think everyone stuck to time, so that which is if you've ever chaired many science conferences, to get scientists to sit down and shut up is very, very difficult. They turn up, 10-minute talk, and they turn up with 50 slides, and they say, "Oh, I'll be quick." But yes. But then there are some other things. Organising something like this with close to 300 people does take a lot of doing. And we've had one person who has moved heaven and earth, I think, over the last couple of weeks. So I'd like to give a very, very big thanks, and I'd like her to stand and come up here, is to Heather. Yes, it's been really challenging because, as was said today, I've been on the Interim Climate Change Committee. I've been working 3 days a week in Wellington for nearly a year, and I've had to leave the running of the centre to other people. And Heather is one of those people who's picked up the mantle. And when it came to the conference, Heather has literally been left to do it. The only things I had, we jointly with Neil worked out who would have the speakers, and then I left. And I managed to sort of arrive back from the UK on Sunday night at 9 o'clock, and then I was hoping that the conference was all there, and it was. And Heather has worked with me. We were the first original employees of the New Zealand Agriculture Greenhouse Gas Research Centre, and so we set it up together, and Heather is still here with me. So Heather. But Heather's not done it alone. I'd also like to thank Trina, my PA, who's also been working untold hours to get this sorted out. Our conference organisers have done a fabulous job. We couldn't have done it without our conference organisers, so that was wonderful. I'd also like to thank the caterers, etc., because it's not easy catering for this number of people, but it worked out really, really well. And I think the dinner last night was excellent, and the general catering has been excellent. So I think this is the 4th time we've held a conference here, and certainly would always do it again because of the service we've received. So that's it. The minister said something about another conference. Well, I think I'll have a bit of a think about that one. It's was it about childbirth? That's as my wife told me. Well, it's never going to go through that again, and inside a few months, he's forgotten. So maybe that's what will happen here as well. But thank you all for coming, and safe journey home.